What's up? It's your boy, D Change, coming at ya with another Daily Dave. This one's for Tuesday, April 7th, 2020. Today I went to the grocery store and it felt like the most intense grocery store experience I've had in a while. So I guess because things are getting pretty serious. Um, like I've said in past videos, thinking about how to keep, you know, my family protected and just take, I guess, extra precautions. So I decided to wear clothes that would cover me up pretty well. We still have some masks, and the good thing is I've been shopping on Amazon for kind of random packs of masks that they're like the cheaper ones coming from China. So they're all gonna get delivered at like different times. But I figure if we have a surplus, it's better because then you could pass them on to someone else, or if we end up needing a lot more, that'd be great. But yeah, because of supply shortages, things are kind of all over the place, and I've been bulk ordering consumables here and there. But the idea was to go to the grocery store and get, like 2 weeks worth of food. So that way we're set. We don't have to take any extra trips. And I do want to start setting up some sort of like delivery service or something like that. What sucks is I know that like this is not an option that everyone has in this country. And I don't know, it really blows when you think about it. Because I've had these like kind of heated discussions about kind of like wealth inequality slash class and how that plays in a country such as the U.S., which is like the richest country in the world. And it just seems really, I don't know, like crappy that like we do have this huge disparity at times. Like I feel like that's one of our defining traits, right? Is that we have extremes of all sorts where we have like the richest of the rich, the smartest of the smartest, like some of the best universities in the world, the best R&D departments in the world. But at the same time, like, there are parts of the states that look like the third world, an extremely undeveloped country, or just poverty levels and just weird stuff that like I feel like other developed nations don't really like have or deal with. And that's why there's always a, a very colorful discussion going on at all times, kind of about policy and the identity of the country and American exceptionalism and how it compares to the rest of the world. Anyway, kind of a tangent, but yeah, I try not to think about it too much, but you can't help but feel sympathetic, empathetic about people who have to live paycheck to paycheck, people who've lost their jobs, people who now literally have to like line up at the food bank, and social distancing. So they got these really long lines where people are trying to stay 6 feet apart, and it's because they don't have any money. And this is not just like, I feel like this is not just the matter of, oh, you made a ton of mistakes, so you quote unquote deserve it, right? I feel like this is a failure of a system as a whole. But yeah, depending on who you ask, it's going to be a different answer. It's going to be at a different place in the spectrum in regards to how much of a social safety net should we have, and how much should you pick yourself up by the bootstraps and figure out your life. Because I don't know, I feel like there's not a lot of we're definitely not trained at school. There's no compulsory education about stuff like this. um I don't think we've learned how to deal with a pandemic. So perhaps this will go into education. I hope it does, because um, at least preparing ourselves for the next one would be much better than, I guess, having what we're having right now. And it also depends on where you live in the country too, right? And in the world, because every response has been, slightly different, and different communities have different problems, etc. So yeah, I remember earlier I was saying like I'm not gonna go overboard. Like I'm just gonna try to live my life normally. I mean, I'm fairly comfortable just kind of staying at home, but I do have to admit that like my main concern again is like I don't want to go out, venture out, catch something, or get like a huge get contaminated and then like bring it into the home. Because if I lived alone, I think I wouldn't have to worry as much. Like I feel like I could just kind of, I'm not gonna go socialize, right? But I can just go out, do my thing, and then yeah, then I would like come into my apartment or whatever, and then just like strip naked, throw stuff into the laundry. Oh, that's another thing. If you don't have like in-home laundry, like this blows. Like we're probably washing stuff more often, disinfecting stuff more often. Um, and yeah, I don't know. Like I literally wash my hands all the time. I wash my phone. I've been wiping down stuff when I have the chance. And yeah, we're just consuming a lot more things that like we normally think of having, such as isopropyl alcohol, disinfectant wipes, and there's still going to be the whole toilet paper shortage and paper towels and other specific cleaning utilities. So it's a real issue. But yeah, this is an interesting kind of taste of a different type of life, right? So I mean, the good thing is I found like 95% of the things I needed, but yeah, it just kind of blows when you're like at the market and you're like, oh, they're out of that thing, we can't get it, and it almost, you know, in the short term, in the small scope, it feels like you kind of don't know when you can get it again. But the reality is that's life for a lot of people across the world, right? So again, it just puts things into perspective and helps me realize kind of how good some of us do have it, uh, versus there are places where needs are just aren't being met on a daily basis, and there are situations where, again, like I said, in the U.S., like you can have this problem. And yeah, just think of all the like the restaurants that are closed, all the part-time workers that, or all the waiters and waitresses, people in the service industry who are out of jobs now. I mean, it's pretty clear that like, sure, there's companies hiring, but then are they gonna hire every single person that's like the 10 million or so, or whatever the number is now, that have filed for unemployment? I'm sure there's more, and there's going to be more, just like the COVID-19 cases. And even that is kind of like crazy because we don't really have a real idea of full infection. We just have an idea of critical cases mostly. But anyway, so yeah, just trying to temper that. But went to the grocery store, got the things, made sure to use hand sanitizer like every time I entered the store, and then when I left and got back into my car. Tried to like keep things in my pockets in a way where I could easily get to them. That was an absolute failure. I was always like, oh, where's my card? But it was always because I was carrying so much other stuff. Um, yeah, and so when I got home, like, I think being paranoid is like leaving your stuff in the garage and then hoping the virus like deteriorates or whatever in 3 days, because yeah, you shouldn't do that to refrigerated items and stuff like that. But I took off my shoes and then like I took off half my clothes and then threw it into the washer immediately. And I also made sure to kind of like carefully do it, because I know that one thing they're realizing with medical workers and PPE is that when they take their clothes off or the equipment off, like the particles can just kind of fly around. So they've found high viral loads in the changing rooms of healthcare workers, and that just sucks, dude. Because in a way, that's like you could be a healthcare worker and you can do everything right, but you still have a chance of being infected, and that's kind of the sucky reality of this whole thing, right? Like you could potentially do everything right in the sense that you follow all guidelines and you still, no necessarily saying you can't go get food, right? But there are supposed to be rules you follow. And then what also blows is you hear about like the grocery store workers who've died already. But yeah, like you could walk into a grocery store and you could get a high enough viral load that you're gonna get sick. And I'm, clearly like anxious about that. But yeah, I tried my best, had the mask on, didn't touch my face. Every time I was tempted, I was like, oh, I'm itchy, but you know what? Can't do it. These hands, they gotta stay below the chest or whatever. Hand sanitized. Found what I needed, and yeah, when I got home, stripped down, uh, pulled stuff out of my pockets, left stuff in the garage, ran over inside to like change my clothes a little bit, got some alcohol, wet paper towel, and I started wiping down everything. And it's funny because I always thought like I'm not gonna do this, but I'm like, you know what? Is there really like harm in doing that? So I find it ironic that I guess it's just, I mean, it's getting to all of us, right? So I feel like better safe than sorry. I feel like it's usually if you overreact a little bit more rather than not, it's fine, because all it means is, yeah, maybe you spent a little extra time, you spent a little bit of extra money thinking that it was going to be worse than it actually was, but the good thing is it wasn't. Whereas the converse of that is, or the reverse of that, conversely, yeah, if you think it's not going to be a big deal. So say I was like, oh, it's not going to be a big deal, not going to wear the mask, my clothes are going to be fine, right? And I was originally thinking like, yeah, I'll just go there and just go in there, get the stuff, bring it in, bring everything inside. What if like, because I've put the bags down on the floor in the store. So you like bring it in the house, drag it around, like pull all the stuff out, put it on the kitchen counters. Like, what if all of those surfaces are now contaminated and you're just shuffling it around constantly? So I don't know. It sucks because then like it's just part of like understanding pathogens and stuff like that, right? Which reminds me, today Dr. John Campbell released like 3 videos. One of them was like kind of a basic overview in case you haven't been following him, which is a really great video to kind of like introduce people to what he's been talking about. I think he based it off of like, was it Ireland's pamphlet / guidelines on, what COVID-19 is and what to do and all that. But the one I really liked was the one that talked about basically is COVID-19 airborne? Is coronavirus airborne? Or SARS-CoV-2? Is it airborne? And what's interesting is the whole like droplets versus airborne particle talk debate is kind of just like old medical science. It's from like the 30s or so, because the reason why they were kind of using those terms originally was because they everyone got wrecked, or a lot of people got wrecked by the Spanish flu or the 1918 influenza pandemic. And after that they're like, oh, we gotta, how did this happen? And so they were doing, they would do like basically experiments where a lot of sick people would be in certain areas, and they tried to kind of figure out like what the correlation was by either using animals or like assistants that were working in those areas for like, was it tuberculosis? So the classification just became a thing of like, it's pretty arbitrary. Like a droplet is this big, and then an airborne particle is this big. But the reality is they sit on the same spectrum. I mean, like moist material that comes from your breath, your cough, and your sneeze, it's all the same thing. They're all just different sizes, and they can travel at different distances and speeds. And that was like the fascinating part. I thought that was like the most interesting video, because Dr. Campbell cited a JAMA paper, Journal of the American Medical Association, talking about kind of why, like, in a way, the social distancing measure we have is kind of like the bare minimum, because breath is actually able to cover 2 meters or 6 feet, 6 to 7 feet. So just breathing and talking already means like, I mean, you or someone you know has like spit in the middle of a conversation before, right? You can see, you can visibly see it. You can see where it goes. You can see how far it travels. And yeah, part of it is your particles fly out of your mouth and they fall on the tables and surfaces and things you touch. So, like, infected people could be passing this along. And then, like, if you're asymptomatic, that's even more problematic, right? Because you don't know that it's a problem, but you could just be like spewing it out everywhere. Now, the sucky thing is, coughs are cover. I don't remember the exact distances, but it's so crazy because like breathing and talking is like up to 6 feet, 7 feet or so, and then coughing basically more than doubles that distance, and then sneezing is like triple plus of that distance. And I didn't get to watch the videos yet, but like there's these videos of apparently there's videos of people like coughing and sneezing, and you can see like the cloud of particles that comes out of them. So I haven't been like a super germaphobe most of my life. In fact, I've had friends that are much more germophobic, and their behaviors would seem like honestly annoying to me. Like especially like if you sneeze and you're not sick, and then they like kind of freak out. They're like, "Oh my gosh, like cover up," you know? Um, because personally, like if you're close friends, like that feels like a very hurtful thing to do because it's like, oh, you're diseased, right? Like being treated that way sucks. But then it makes sense if like you just don't want to get sick, right? You don't want pathogens entering your body. And so it knowing that like, man, like is this going to change how we like interact as people? I mean, I don't think it's going to change a lot because there's all, I mean, 100 years ago we already had something this catastrophic. And look at what happened, right? Like you could argue in the grand scheme of things we didn't learn much from from our past, which I think is being a little unfair, because I think we've been able to recall a lot more of that stuff and kind of apply techniques much faster. I mean, it's very clear that like a lot of Asia has experienced pandemics, epidemics much more. So in a way, they kind of they know this. They know this is a problem, and in a way, they're more prepared to handle it. Whereas, to be fair, like generally, we have pretty good food safety standards and hygiene standards and cleanliness and stuff like that, but it's not always the case. So normally, you can rely on that safety net of a certain height. But then once something crazy comes in and kind of, such as a novel virus that jumps from an animal species, so that means no one has immunity to it, then it becomes a problem. So, and people have been warning about it, yada yada, and it sucks. It sucks to kind of just know that like the signs were there, blah blah blah. Rich people have talked about it, scientists have talked about it, etc. Anyway, why am I getting into this? Oh, because just the whole. I thought it was super interesting. It was the most to me that was like the new revelation, so to speak. So that just kind of shows how much more important it is to stay away from other people, which I do try to do. Like I'm in the market and I'm just like, someone gets closer, I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna go to the other side of the building and wait for them to finish their thing and then come back to go get my things. Just don't want to. It's not to be, offensive or whatever, or like, oh, dirty people, but more like we all got to protect ourselves. But yeah, generally, most people are wearing masks, and the mask helps to keep your like spit moisture and germs in your area. Like it might bounce off the mask and fall like onto your clothes, but it won't be like, rocketing out of you as much, or there's obstruction so that there's not as much coming out. So that's the idea behind it. The masks don't protect you, like the regular surgical masks do not protect you from an actual infected person. Not necessarily anyway, but it's meant to be like a form of mechanical herd immunity, right? Or mechanical barrier for the herd. I'm not going to say immunity because that's not what it is, but it's meant to protect everyone, because if you have high compliance and everyone does it, then you're limiting the amount of pathogens that get into the air. And another problem is poor ventilation, right? With poor ventilation, the particles stay in the air longer. But if you're able to open up the windows and move air out, that's always great. But that's why at first the whole thing was like, don't go to concerts, don't go to, crowded indoor events. Now it's just like, just don't go anywhere. But that's why like walks outside should be fine, because generally your people aren't like super congregating in your neighborhood or whatever. But unfortunately, like, I guess because people like at the big parks, like they just don't want people like gathering and picnicking and stuff like that. There's, it sounds like a lot of people just are not allowed to visit famous parks and stuff like that anymore. So anyway, I'll probably drop a link to that video in the description, because I thought it was interesting. And then he links to the JAMA article that you can take a more scientific look at the findings when it comes to just projectile. What is it? Projectile bodily fluids? I don't know. It's, yeah. Again, if you think about it too much, it's disgusting. If you think about anything too much, it sucks. But just know that, like, hey, there's things you can do in order to just make it better for yourself, right? So yeah, that's all I got to say about that. Hope you're all staying healthy and safe, and that you're keeping sane in this life of isolation, so to speak. Remember to check up on your loved ones and use those video calling apps. By the way, Zoom, I guess, is like under a lot of fire for being like very insecure. Yeah, I guess that sucks, but it sounds like they've been working pretty hard to fix it. I just know that, I guess if you have a fairly locked down network at your company, you're pretty safe. But I think the problem is that, schools are not as, they're not really built to be these huge online companies, or they're not used to having like, large amounts of remote work. I mean, this whole like moving everything to online classes, moving everyone into just remote work and all that, attempting to do that anyway, is a huge shift. So I can understand why schools are having a lot of trouble with it, because yeah, the whole Zoom bombing thing like really sucks. You're legitimately trying to educate, but someone just, wants the lulz, wants the laughs, and they just come in and do their thing. So yeah, I guess there's other products out there, but it just really depends on your respective company, or what you're willing to kind of put up with. Because you got to do the research and then, clear it with like your IT department and stuff like that. And I mean, in a way, it's like IT's job to vet these programs and kind of implement them on an enterprise level. So a lot more moving parts than just do another thing, right? I don't know. People are like, there's Skype, but then like I've never been that huge of a fan of Skype. And then honestly, Facebook Messenger video chat has been like absolute garbo for me lately. So I legit don't want to use it anymore. It's just like, it's a great chat app, but I think the servers are being hammered by a lot of people using it for calls and for video conferences and stuff like that. So, and it's only like browser based / app based, so I can understand why it's like still really wonky. I would rather use something like Skype or Discord, or I don't know if Google Hangouts is still around. I think I don't know. Google kills like so many things off these days that like no one even knows what their product lineup is anymore. And I'm just trying to think of like who else does this stuff. So anyway, just topics and topics. Train of thought type of video. So yeah. Oh yeah, if you all have iPhones, then you can just use FaceTime. And I guess if you all have Pixels, you can use Duo. But then like if you're talking like cross device and stuff like that, which honestly I feel like is the real thing. Like you do want cross device products. there's stuff like Line, there's stuff like WeChat, there's stuff like WhatsApp. So yeah, and then yeah, I guess Skype is one of the most popular ones. Anyway, yeah, go Skype a friend, go Skype a family member, do that, and yeah, take care of yourselves, meditate, make some coffee, pick up a new hobby, journal, do yoga at home. I don't know, just foster a pet. I heard pets are gone now, or like that sounds so messed up. I heard there's like adoption centers are legit like seeing all their pets being taken away for fostering, which is like, oh, I'm just gonna babysit the pet or whatever, which is kind of cool, because like the cool thing is you socialize them for a human life, but you're not like keeping them or whatever. And so at least it means like the animals get some love, so that's cool. But anyway, yeah, go pet an animal and Skype a friend. All right, have a good night. Peace out.